As we talk about student learning, consider this three-legged stool. It's very stable and will support someone without wobbling or tipping over. However, if one leg is missing, the stool is unbalanced and cannot even stand up on its own. If this stool represents student learning in Granite, the three legs look like this. The first is the Utah Core Standards. We focus on fidelity to the core, assuring that all students, with appropriate interventions and extensions, become proficient in what the state requires they know and are able to do. The second leg is state assessments of learning, which are used to inform school grades and accountability measures. In Granite, we've expanded the use of assessments beyond high-stakes summative tests to a formative approach that helps guide instruction and personalize learning. What our stool has lacked in the past, however, is a sturdy third leg, specifically an accurate method for reporting to parents and students at systematic intervals on individual academic growth being made by students. Until now, teachers' grades have been rooted in a myriad of criteria: effort, task completion, tests, punctuality, extra credit, projects, etc., and often have little or no relationship to mastery of state standards. Proficiency-based learning addresses that disconnect. We teach to the standards, assess learning of the standards, and report on that progress every 9 weeks. It is this third proficiency-based learning leg that stabilizes the stool and firmly upholds each student's learning. So, in talking about how we report progress, let's discuss the purpose of grades in the proficiency-based learning model. Grades are meant to show what a student knows and is able to do with respect to classroom content that has been taught. They communicate progress toward proficiency in subject standards and encourage the student to act on feedback and the teacher to adjust and individualize instruction. Grades are not determined by behavior, attendance, or task completion. Behaviors are recorded in the citizenship grade, and extra credit or penalties for late work are not part of Granite's proficiency-based learning model. Students may instead use feedback on previous assessments and learning activities to further demonstrate their proficiency with redos, retakes, or future assessments. Learning activities are meant for practice, and as such are not recorded with scores, so there is no need for late work. We can use a case study to illustrate why it's so important for grades to accurately reflect what students know and are able to do. Take a look at these two grade reports. These reports are taken from the junior year of 2 Granite School District students who are currently in their senior year. Looking at their final letter grades, what can you infer about each student's academic progress and achievement? Now let's look at how their grades were determined. What do you notice about the types of learning activities recorded in the gradebook? What patterns do you notice about student performance? Now consider this additional data about the students. Think about their letter grades and grade point averages. Which of these students will leave Granite School District prepared for the rigors of college? In order for grades to accurately reflect student learning, Granite School District formed a committee of teachers, administrators, directors, curriculum specialists, and Granite Education Association members. This committee worked together for 4 years to research best practices and develop the philosophy for proficiency-based learning. Drawing from their expertise, research, and practice, the committee developed these 7 guiding principles for proficiency-based learning. Homework is a meaningful, independent practice which requires time and effort outside the classroom and has an articulated purpose tied to content standards, but is not scored, although teachers are expected to give feedback. Extra credit is not included in the academic grade. Points are not deducted for reasons other than a student's lack of academic proficiency. Issues of student behavior, participation, punctuality, work timeliness, and effort are reflected in a citizenship grade rather than an academic grade. Classroom assessments are tied directly to specific content standards and objectives. Teachers create frequent opportunities for students to demonstrate proficiency. Teachers will use a multitude of assessment evidence in multiple modalities to determine a student's level of proficiency, including assignments, observation, portfolios, tests, products, discussions, projects, performance tasks, and others. Now that we understand the guiding principles of proficiency-based learning, let's look at how it differs from traditional point systems. With a point system, homework is counted for grades even though students are just learning new concepts. Extra credit may be given to bolster poor grades due to unlearned concepts. Grades are not always an accurate reflection of student learning because of penalties or rewards of student behavior, such as late work, completion, or participation. Under proficiency-based learning, homework is given for practice. Feedback on homework is given, but not points. Extra credit is not necessary. Instead, students are provided with multiple opportunities to demonstrate their proficiency in a specific standard. The academic grade is reflective of only academic performance. Behaviors are recorded in the citizenship grade. With a point system, assessments of learning may not identify which standards are being addressed. Assessments may be given once and no process is in place to address unlearned material. And the actual assessment of learning may be a single type of high-stakes test. In proficiency-based learning, assessments are tied to specific standards to inform a student's progress and proficiency. There are frequent opportunities to demonstrate proficiency. If a student doesn't perform well on an assessment, additional opportunities will be available to show proficiency. Throughout the school year, teachers enter scores for assessments related to a particular standard. 1 indicates not proficient in the standard, 2 means approaching proficient, 3 indicates proficiency in that standard, and 4 indicates highly proficient. The most recent score on a learning assessment determines the proficiency score for the standard. This method of calculation is referred to as recency and places the greatest value on the most recent evidence of learning. This gives students the opportunity to grow in their understanding of a standard through formative experiences, such as learning tasks, activities, formative assessments, and checks for understanding, and receive feedback on those experiences in preparation for a summative assessment. The score on the most recent summative assessment will determine the proficiency score for a specific standard and calculate into the final grade for the course. A proficiency score will populate as soon as a teacher enters an assessment score, and the overall grade will calculate. In grades kindergarten through 8, these proficiency scores for standards add up to an overall proficiency score for a particular subject. In grades 9 through 12, an overall letter grade is provided along with a cumulative grade point average, or GPA. The online gradebook allows teachers, students, and parents to see the individual assessments and scores. In the case of secondary students, once a letter grade is calculated for each course, the GPA on the report card is calculated the exact same way it has always been calculated. It's important to remember that the term assessment encompasses any tool or strategy a teacher uses to gather evidence of a student's understanding of a particular standard. These can come in the form of oral explanations, written responses, projects, discussions, models, drawings, performances, or other demonstrations. Teachers should look at the tasks they have been traditionally using and determine if they would be best used as a learning activity, an assessment, or perhaps not used at all. Additionally, all students should be given opportunities to demonstrate proficiency and achieve their highest level. If a student misses lower-level assessment items, they still need an opportunity to demonstrate their learning on all levels of questions. They should also be able to show increased levels of proficiency through retakes and redos. It is the teacher's responsibility, in collaboration with their PLC, to determine how many times a standard is assessed. This decision should be informed by students' progress on learning activities, classroom discussions, interactions, and other formative measures. The proficiency-based learning reporting system fits with the Granite Way model of PLCs for designing instructional materials that help students meet the expectations of the Utah core standards. Teachers determine what they are teaching, what they will do to collect evidence of student learning, how to provide extensions or opportunities for reteaching students who need it, and consider the modality of assessing that makes sense for the standard and for their students. In reviewing results of assessments, Teachers can determine areas for reteaching for an entire class, or if individual students need extensions or more practice. Granite's implementation of proficiency-based learning helps students become college and career ready by showing them specific areas of strength and weakness in terms of the standards prescribed for the course. With this knowledge, they can be confident of their skills to do well in successive courses, including those in college. Students learn how to track their academic growth, and they're able to advocate for opportunities to demonstrate their learning, retake assessments, and ask for support or suggestions to improve learning.